This is Frank Karen.
So here we are at the start menu of BattleForge, and you'll see that there's a world map. What's interesting about BattleForge is that it's actually an MMO type game. So there's a bunch of different levels, and each of the levels has a certain player requirement. So some levels can use 2 people, some levels can use 4 people, some levels can use 16 people. So there's a bit of a co-op MMO kind of vibe to it. Basically, BattleForge involves using cards to stand in for units in your typical RTS. So each player has a deck of cards, and each card corresponds to either a unit, a building, or a spell. Using different decks and combinations of the various cards that you can collect, players can basically customize their own army. And what's really interesting about it is that the game is very fast-paced. So it's the strategy here is using the cards that you've selected for yourself effectively. So you can see there's many different cards and 4 different types of cards, and you can mix and match them however you want. But there is a bit of an interesting twist to it in that to use the cards of a specific element, you have to capture resources that are magic stones of that specific element. So if you start and put the first magic stone here, which I did, you'll see as Shadow, I can only summon Shadow units off the bat. And I'll have to capture another resource point that will let me add fire or whatever I choose. So here you can see we're at the beginning of one of the early levels, and I'm summoning units very quickly. The thing about BattleForge is that it's very, very fast-paced, so there isn't a whole lot of standing around, there's no building or resource gathering, you're literally moving from one point to another, capturing resources, summoning creatures, and basically just quickly moving through the whole thing. And when you have more than one player involved, it can get very, very hectic. So here I'm using a bunch of different shadow units, some archers and some straight up fighters that are going against this relatively large creature. And the creature sizes and the unit types are pretty varied. Like there's some smaller creatures, there's bigger creatures, and they all have strengths and weaknesses, and even small creatures can take down large creatures. So there's still a bit of a rock, scissors, paper element to it, but so here if you look at the bottom, you can see the 2 on the outside are power cores, and the one in the middle is a magic core. Power cores are what you use to generate the money that you basically buy units with, whereas magic cores are what enable you to build certain units. So each card, or each unit, will have a specific requirement for both power and magic orbs. So you'll need to use, let's say 100 power to summon a unit, but you'll also require, say, 2 shadow magic orbs to summon a more powerful shadow unit. So when you're building your deck, effectively what you're saying is, do you want to have units that are all pretty much low level and they only require 1 magic core and have a breadth of them? Or do you want to stick really focused on one specific archetype and get 4 deep once you've found more magic cores? So now here I'm reinforcing my army with some quick units, and if you see, I've actually built a tower. Towers are effectively the only real structures in the game, and basically they're just designed to, act as background support while your forces are doing their work. Now this particular tower that I have has a skill called relocation, which actually lets me move it. Normally these towers are sort of static structures, but these particular towers from the Shadow unit, from the Shadow faction, are incredibly powerful because you can move them and you can keep them out of harm's way and reuse them through the course of your battle. Now, the interesting thing about the story missions is that there's actually other stuff going on. You'll see these blue units in the center of the screen. They're actually computer-controlled units, and in this particular battle I have to make sure that they don't die. So I'm not doing very good of a job of it here, but you can get the idea that it does bank a lot on the typical RTS kind of genre norms. But there's still an interesting sort of co-op aspect to it, and the fast-paced nature of the combat is very unique. So here you can see I'm moving my tower up from the back. And I'm just waiting for this little cinema to go, but now here I've spotted another power source, so I'm collecting it. Basically, to collect the power sources, all you have to do is have your units near it and have no enemy units in the area, and then simply you pay to capture it. This particular one is a magic temple, so I'm using it to gain another point of shadow, which will allow me to summon stronger shadow units.
explosive. Pull back. Move back when these ones fall.
Now that my shadow structure has finished building, I'm going to use it to create some of the higher level shadow units. So these are dinosaur insectoid type creatures that are extremely powerful compared to my stock units. And so I'm reinforcing my army with a couple of extra more powerful units before moving forward. On the left hand side, you'll see what I was just clicking is actually a quick group function that you can use to quickly create groups. The interface of BattleForge is much more streamlined than you'd find in a typical RTS game. There's not a whole lot of use for the keyboard if you don't want to use it. You can access all kinds of shortcuts just with the mouse and knowing where to click on the UI. And there's a pretty well fleshed out tutorial at the beginning of the game that lets you get a handle on it. It's a very accessible game. It's oriented towards getting lots of people in and just concentrating on what really makes RTS games fun and not getting bogged down in the minutia of micromanagement and resource management. So here I've come across another energy core, which I cannot capture because there are enemy units in the area, so I have to quickly destroy this enemy building. Now this particular tower that I built does not have the ability of my other ones which allow them to relocate. So basically what I've done is I've fortified the energy post, and that's going to keep it safe for at least a short while I attack from another angle. But defending points is actually not all that important because the computer cannot steal your points back. Effectively what I'm doing by putting that tower there is just preventing the enemy from coming up behind me. There's very little in the way of Company of Heroes style defend the point. It's very much offensively focused. Now unfortunately for me at this point the battle takes a bit of a turn for the worse as the enemy's armies are far superior to my own. And that's a reflex of what I've decided to do with my shadow orbs. See, knowing how to use the orbs properly and which ways to do them and which ways to use your cards is really important. The depth that comes as a result of this create your own deck style play is actually surprising. People might get overwhelmed at how complicated it is to really build a good deck because like CCG games, your deck is really what makes or breaks you. And so if you're not using the specific units that you've chosen in the right way, you're going to get dominated, basically, which is what happens to me here. Now that big effect that I just used was one of my particular spells. The shadow spells focus on using corpses for various things, so in that case I used a corpse explosion, which did an area effect attack against all the units in the area, using the corpses as fuel. The last element of the game that's probably worth mentioning in this quick preview is that as you finish battles, you earn coins and you earn BattleForge points. And the coins and the points are used to purchase booster packs to get new cards. Now unfortunately EA has decided to go sort of the CCG route, and you will actually be able to buy new packs for real money. But the developers have reassured hopeful fans that the cards that you can purchase will not imbalance the game. So effectively you would just be buying new fancy looking units and the occasional rare one. But for the most part the stock cards that you can get during the story mode, and you actually have to buy packs with the points that you earn from the story mode, will serve you well. So that's a quick look at BattleForge. I hope you found this interesting, and we'll catch you next time.